For P5-4, I'm going to use a mix of the configured parts and the single individual parts. There's no real rules, but because of decisions that I've made previously, I don't have the 60 by 90 as as an individual part, so I will have to use the plate, and then I can use brackets and the pegs. So it's not that there's any set rules. It's just that whether we call it a domino effect or just the design intent or magic crystal ball, when we choose a direction that we're going to uh, figure out a way to stay with it. So insert the components. I'm going to bring in the plate, and I can check real quick, but I did not create any spacers for a 30 by 90 or a 60 by 90. So we'll grab the plate, and if I think about it, I will grab the plate 60 by 90 and open. And once again, if I recognize the context, I can rotate. I can rotate about X. If that's not coming up or it's turned off, we can right click and rotate about X that way. All right, and again, if I go back over to the OK, it's going to snap origin to origin and fix my part. All right, so this isn't going to exactly look like this piece as long as I get the geometry in. I can rotate it into any position that I want to make it look like. If for some reason it has to look like that orientation in the isometric, I can always float this part and change the mates to cause it to go that way. All right, so let's bring in, I'm going to go this way, insert components, existing part and assembly, and these are going to be the L bracket. All right, so there's no rule that says once I've created this, created these geometries that I have to use anything specific. I would like to be consistent though, and we don't want to lock rotation, and the mate alignment is okay, so I'm going to ignore those. We'll click and hold down the control and select and go coincident. And then again, as I hold down the middle mouse wheel and rotate the view and then left click on the part, I can rotate the part and then select control select. I'm probably going to go parallel there again. All right, now my choices are to insert from the component, bring in the other L bracket, but because I already have an L bracket, I'm either going to pick from the component tree or from the work area and left click. Let's see what I want to do. Hold down the control button, left click, hold down, let go of the mouse button, let go of the control button, and then we can go through the same sequence. So there's a lot of repetition here. Repetition, repetition, repetition. And we're not going to rotate. It looks like it's in the right position, but I want more control over that geometry. So let's do the select, control, select, and coincident, and select, control, select, parallel. All right, so that gives me my first instance. And again, I have the habit or the preference to bring in my major components, and I'm going to worry about hardware later, because what usually ends up happening is as I go through a design, and if I'm doing a concept or building in that geometry, there may come a point where in the development process that I want to make a change. And if I go from a flat head to a socket head to a hex head to through bolts to tapped holes, I want to be able to make that change seamlessly. And to do that, pretty much need to have the hardware go in last after I'm in the 85-90% sure that that's the way the design is going to be. All right, so we're going to which way do we want to go here? I did not go to the desktop, and we have all of this fun stuff, and see if it pops up. I am not seeing the My Drive, so that one's not going to be as convenient to get into, navigate to. I would have to go down to the C drive and to the users and to the Google and My Drive, and that's a lot of tunneling. So I'm going to pick a better choice than out of the desktop list in the File Explorer. All right, so I need the peg, and the peg was configured, and it's still going to be a 10 by 20. And actually, this is a good spot to go ahead and introduce the mate reference. All right, so eventually I'm going to do this to all of the parts, because if I'm reusing these and I'm doing this enough, there comes a point where the different combinations, depending on what our product is, what the design is going to do, but if I'm reusing a lot of these, there's going to come a point where I'm going to add the mate references, and then I'm also going to consider making a design library folder that I can just drag and drop these items rather than have them insert, and then they become kind of a global usable component. So what I want to do is open the peg. And one of the things that is kind of weird with the configurations, so let's do it to the default first, is that once we add, and I'm going to go to the isometric, shouldn't really matter which end, I'm going to select the edge. Now, the edge gives me a mate reference. So like we were getting the stack of marshmallows, the concentric from dragging a part into an assembly, this is going to have the same effect, but this is one place where I prefer the edge because it's going to give me concentricity, and it will also give me the coincident. Now, it may not lock the rotation, but I'm okay with that. And to deal with it in the the configurations, notice it's unsuppressed there, but when I come over here, the mate references are suppressed. So we have to go through each of these, and let's see, can I configure? I haven't done this in a while, so now I have to dust off some brain cells, remember what I told it to do. Properties, there we go. So under the feature properties, I want to go to all configurations and uncheck the suppressed, and so it unsuppresses it, and hit OK. The check then is to go to 1030, and the mate references are active. Go to 1040, and the mate reference is active. All right, we're going to save that, and I can close it or I could leave it open, not really going to matter. But in this case, now when I go in and select the peg, and I'm left it at the 10 by 40, so I'm changing it to the 10 by 20, I can drag, and sort of like the marshmallows, it's going to apply those mates or infer those mates. So let's go ahead and hit tab so that it reverses, and then I can click. So another advantage, we just got a little bit quicker. Another advantage is that I will be able to go find the concentricity, and this may be one where I want to wait until I've applied all of these. So control button, left click, drag, and then fingers get a little more contortion practice. So if I also have to hit the tab button before I let these go. Once I've got this going the right way, so at this point I'm holding down the control button with my thumb, I'm operating the tab with my left index finger, and the left mouse button is positioning the item. So it's pointing the wrong way. On the control select, hit the tab button, let everything go, and one more. All right, so this takes a little bit of getting used to. There's some challenges here, and that gives me my geometry. All right, so practice with that. Oh, I mentioned the concentrices. So again, that mate reference, by picking the edge, it applied a coincident to the end face. It sees that one. It sees the the coincident, the concentric, the coincident, the concentric. So if I were to go through and find my concentrices and do a right click, I could lock the rotation of all of those at the same time. All right, so this is a juggling act. There's a lot going on here. It seems, I try to make it simple. I always say my job is to make it look easy and convince you that you can do it too. That we want all of this geometry and to get into that flow and that process of managing our geometry, creating assemblies, sub-assemblies, creating the parts to be able to build these out. All right. Optionally, we are going to use these in the drawings, so I'm going to recommend you go ahead and do it. I'm not going to make it a requirement just yet, but on future projects, for my assignments, I'm going to be looking at having the exploded views for our bill of materials in the uh, drawings. So for the chain, we're going to allow it to do the auto spacing. And when I look at an exploded view, I think, what is my stationary part? When I'm building the assembly, I think, oh, I'd pick this part up. I would align the L bracket to it. I'd put the peg or the screw in place and then pick up the next one and then line this one up, put the pegs in, basically along those lines. When I'm looking at this from the exploded view standpoint, what would I want to be stationary? What is the most obvious or logical? And so the L brackets would be nice if they stayed put. And with the auto spacing on, if I grab those three components and drag out, let's go out 50. And then I can tinker with that spacing and say, yeah, that looks pretty good. And then we're going to hit done. The next group, and just remember, if you happen to hit the check mark, because I do that quite often and it kicks me out, is I can always right click on the exploded view in the configuration, and we'll do that again. I can get back into my setup, and since I made the other one 50, let's see what that looks like at 50. And then we'll drag, so that's a little bit closer. Well, that one's all the way out, and so maybe we'll go to 30. All right, so that gives it a little more range. I don't know if it's trying to... All right, that looks good. So we'll hit done, hit OK, and then it kicks me back to here. I decide I want to go make a change. Maybe I think this one's a little too far. We're going to go into the configuration manager. I'm going to expand out the configuration that I added the explode view to. And if I know which one it was, then I'm going to tunnel down to chain 1. And we're going to edit the explode step. That takes me right to the one that I'm interested in, more so than having to go through the selection up here. And then when I hit done, it updates. That looks, for whatever, that looks a little bit better. When I highlight those, it's showing me the group in the chain. And then I can accept. We'll save one more time. I'll collapse. I'll explode. Collapse. We'll set it, and everything looks good there for our P5-4. All right, so this went a little bit faster, but I also want you to get into that mindset of thinking I brought this part in, and it's what you saw first. It doesn't, I could have just as easily brought in the vertical and applied and built the other way. There is no set rule. It's just as you go along, you will find a process and a methodology that works for you. So to understand the relations in the sketch and building the features and how the features create the part and how the part goes into the assembly and what the mate relations do at the assembly level, that all gives us this workflow to get our product to this point.